I know you've mentioned when we last spoke earlier today that you've associated with a number of churches.
No, I didn't say that.
Well, I can't remember what you said. You made a comment about a couple of organisations you might have had something to do with. Forgive me, I was on the high street of my local village, so I wasn't sort of lots of buses and traffic going past me. What's your background, Robert? Tell me a little bit about yourself. I have been a Jehovah's Witness for the last 44 years, so that's my background. What's yours?
I'm 63 years old, 64 next month. My father died when I was very young. That had a big impact upon me negatively. Yeah. I started searching as a teenage boy. I read lots of occult books. I was very keen. I did transcendental meditation for several years. I never met him, of course. He was a con man. But I had a guru, T. Lobsang Rampa, and I read all of the T. Lobsang Rampa books I could get my hand on. I had a very famous uncle. He was on Wogan one Christmas between Paul McCartney and John Cleese. He was John Cleese's psychiatrist.
Okay.
And Uncle Robin, I visited him once, and he told me he knew all about T. Lobsang Rampa. He was a plumber from Northern Ireland who was basically a con man who wrote all these T. Lobsang Rampa books to make money. He pretended he was the reincarnation of a Tibetan lama.
All right.
So that was my background into my early 20s. I met a family friend. I say family friend, family acquaintance would be more apt. I won't give this person's name. You can actually trace him. You can actually find his name if you probably do a Google search, because there was a Daily Mail exposure of him. His father was one of the biggest traitors this country's ever had. His father fled to Russia. And he was a major spy who double-crossed British intelligence. Well, right. I met the son, who I won't name, and in our family we don't give the name. We always want to respect this other family, so we don't mention the name. I knew him casually. He had gone to Cambridge. He got a first-class honours degree in theology from Cambridge. I met him in the early 1980s. He was in an Anglican centre in Canning Town, I think it was. So I went to see him. We hadn't seen each other for 10 years or so when we were kids. And he was now a Christian and of a sort of Pentecostal persuasion.
Yeah.
And so he said I had to read the Bible. You know, you had to read the Bible. And so I did, actually. I read the whole of the New Testament. And I don't know, I think it did make an impact upon me. But, I mean, some of the answers he gave were just silly. There was no desire to answer any questions. I continued to look and to read Christian books and Christian literature. I made a profession of faith in a church quite near to Kensington Temple, in Notting Hill, in West London. In 1985, I was baptised in 1985 at Peniel Chapel. I think it's called a community church now. This was an Assemblies of God church. I fell away after a year when I was offered a Bible study by a member of the London Church of Christ who were doing tubing. Basically what you do, knocking door to door, they did it on tube trains in London.
Oh, right.
And they said I wasn't a real Christian. Anyone who doesn't go to their church is a hypocrite. Every other religious group are all hypocrites, are all going to go in hell. I had to be a real Christian like them. So I got my Bible out because I was absolutely pig ignorant, biblically illiterate, to a remarkable degree. Because of my background in, I read occult books. I was never in a coven or anything like that, but I read occult books. I was fanatical about T. Lobsang Rampa. I practiced TM. So I was just another clueless person in basically a happy, clappy church. They said I had to read the Bible, so I did. I read it. And I went home from work one Friday. And I read the Bible from 6 in the evening to 2 o'clock in the morning non-stop. And the more I read, the more I saw that there were all these what seemed to be contradictions. Jesus rose at the 9th hour, and it says here he rose at the 3rd hour. Obvious contradiction. And there were lots of things I found like that. So I went back to the London Church of Christ, only went to about 3 or 4, maybe 5 meetings at the most. And the way they treated me was disgusting. The person who recruited me, and I was only in it for, I wasn't in it. I just went to about probably 4 meetings. He went in the kitchen, he was pointing at me, and pointing at me and sort of speaking to the leaders who were just kids in their 20s, which is what I was. I was just a kid in my 20s. And it was obvious they're just a bunch of clueless idiots making it all up as they go along. I did go to I think they had a meeting in Regent Street. I remember going somewhere, I think it was in Regent Street, to the London Church of Christ building. And it was incredible because people were standing up. I donate my electric guitar to the church. I donate, someone else would stand. I donate my car to the church. And, people were just absolutely giving all these possessions to the church. And, someone would literally get out an electric guitar and here it is, I donate it to the church or mission. Whether they did that every week or not, I don't know. Maybe it was handed back at the end of the service. I really don't know. But I fell away. I became an atheist in 1996. I was offered a Bible study by a young man who was 19 years old. He was the assistant pastor of a oneness church, which met in quite near to where I live. I was in Limehouse in East London. And there was a Methodist church there called Trinity Church. Now, this group, Oneness, denied the Trinity. They believed it was the devil.
Yeah.
But the Methodists were renting rooms to an anti-Trinitarian group.
Wow.
I kept listening to the Gospel of Mark. I even started to memorize the Gospel of Mark. And then I repented and came back to faith, but I wasn't going anywhere.
No.
So what I then did was I saw this assistant pastor 2 years later. Now he would have been 21. And what he did, he offered me a Bible study on the book of Acts and baptism. And he told me later what he did. He had lots of huge Bibles, very large Bibles. And he would take them to people's houses, give them Bible studies, and if they weren't very keen, when he left, he would deliberately leave the Bible behind. Do you know why he did that?
No, go on, tell me.
So he could knock a few days later and say, did I leave my Bible behind? By the way, what did you think about this verse? What do you think about? And so he could just continue the Bible study.
Right. Yeah. Okay, yeah.
I was given a Bible study on the book of Acts. I was told the baptismal formula was Lord Jesus Christ, because if you read the book of Acts, Acts 2:38, repent and be baptized in the name of Jesus Christ. And it says Lord Jesus in Acts 8, Acts 22, Acts 19, Acts 8 say to be baptized in the name of the Lord Jesus. So this group taught the baptismal formula was Lord Jesus Christ, because Jesus was the Father, Jesus was the Son, Jesus was the Holy Spirit. Jesus is one person. There's no Trinity, which was presented as a three-God belief. There's only Jesus, who is the Father, who is the Son, who is the Holy Spirit. So I got rebaptized in the oneness in 1988, summer of 1988. I was very confused when I was in it. The moment I allowed myself to be rebaptized, it was really confusing. I wrote a tract for them on baptism. I offered £1,000 if anyone could prove the Trinity from the book of Acts, or Trinitarian baptismal formula from the book of Acts. So it was written against the Trinity. But I had a post office box. I offered £1,000 if you could prove the Trinity baptismal formula from the book of Acts on the back. And I printed thousands of them, and they went all over the world. To my shame, there was a church in India which wrote to me. They were republishing it in India. And it's a long, long story, but God spoke to me. I got into, I was working as a security guard. I went into the Broadgate building in London for a night shift. It was about midnight. I was doing the rounds. You had to do a round of the building.
Yeah.
There, I got into a lift, and they had some like boards over the lift because they just built this building, and not all of the boards had been taken down. There were still some like protective boards to protect the expensive mirrors, and there was one piece of graffiti in the whole building, the Broadgate. One piece of graffiti in this building, and it was a word that was in my King James Bible because I used to be very strongly King James. In fact, I was King James only until I learned better. The word was from Acts chapter 10. It was the word Cornelius. Imagine that for a piece of graffiti. The word Cornelius, spelt exactly the same as in my Bible.
Yeah.
And I got my little tract out. I went to a quiet place as I was doing my rounds. I took 5 minutes to go on my knees, open my little King James Bible, which I couldn't read now because my eyes are not very good. Tiny print Bible. And I said, Lord, I will obey you whatever you lead, whether it's the Trinity that's true or the oneness that's true or some other belief that's true, whether they're all wrong. I will obey you and I'll do exactly what you want. I just ask one thing of you. Show it to me from the Bible. And shortly after that, there was actually something that happened shortly before that, actually, which made me think. You see, most of the oneness people in London were from the West Indies. I was one of the few white people, and another white person, one of the few white people in the group, was James, whose father was from Cornwall. Now, this is more than 30 years ago. He might not be alive now, might have passed on. But James wanted to convert his father. So James travelled down to Cornwall in his pastor's car, Pastor McFarland, who pastored a Bible Way church. I think it was in Hackney or somewhere around there. So James and Pastor McFarland travelled down to Cornwall to convert James's father. And then Pastor McFarland pulled in. He said, God's spoken to me. And he got out a piece of paper and he wrote something on the piece of paper. And then he drove on. When he arrived in Cornwall, he met Mr. Pask, James's father, and he said, the Lord has given me this for you. And it was a piece of paper where he'd written one word on it. The word was shibboleth. Are you familiar with this?
Familiar, but I couldn't remember what it is. Explain to me. You tell me.
It's from Judges. There was a battle. There was fighting, and so a password was given, shibboleth, and some people from a different part of the region, it's rather like our regional accents here in the UK, they couldn't pronounce it. They said sibboleth, not shibboleth. So if you said the word wrongly,
you were from the wrong region.
Yeah, but you failed the test because it was a password. Now, Pastor McFarlane gave Mr. Pass this piece of paper with shibboleth on it, and he said, what is it? And he explained it's a password to gain entrance to the camp of the Ephraimites. It's something that God has told me to give you. And Mr. Pass said, well, he was very particular. He's like I am now. I wasn't then, but he wanted to look it up. Let me look it up. Don't just paraphrase. I want to look up the actual verse in the Bible. And he looked it up, and Pastor McFarlane had spelt the word incorrectly. So I then went on a holiday to France with my mother and my brother. And my mother had remarried. It wasn't a successful marriage. But stepfather, so the four of us went to France for a short skiing holiday, and I had 2 weeks away from this group, because in this group every single day there's church activities. There's not a moment's peace. And I'd also started to do a Bible course with them. So I think twice a week I had 2 lots of work to do. If I went to the Bible course, I also had the church group Wednesday meeting work to catch up on. So you were snowed under with so much work you couldn't think for yourself. To be away from it for 2 weeks gave me peace. And I can't remember exactly when that Cornelius, my £1,000 Bible prize tract happened. I can't remember when, because we're talking about, it's getting to me almost 40 years ago now. So I don't know which was first, whether it was going to France or that or whatever, or the incident with Mr. Pask. But these 3 things, the incident with Mr. Pask, where clearly God was warning him that this was a false group. My Cornelius incident, 1 piece of graffiti in this whole bank, and it's exactly the same as in my tract. Oh, and by the way, on my tract, I had made a mistake. I had written Cornelius was a Samaritan. Because on the previous section, Acts 8, when I went through a list of proofs, the people there in Acts 8 were Samaritans. So on the word proser, I copied that into Acts 10, and I'd made a mistake. So I could see that God was speaking to me and warning me. Basically, God opened my heart very quickly and showed me that the oneness doctrine was complete nonsense. The idea that Jesus, when he's on earth, he's praying to himself in heaven because God is one person is absolutely ridiculous. And I came very quickly and very solidly to a Trinitarian position. I was influenced rather negatively by Dr. Walter Martin, who was a wonderful Christian evangelist and did a lot of good works, but he had 1 or 2 weird views on the Trinity. Particularly, he held to sonship by incarnation view, which was a view taught by some Victorian Baptists who were a bit odd. And this view is that there is no eternal Son. There's only the eternal Word who becomes the eternal Son at the incarnation. So I was influenced by that for a little bit of time. I did try going to different churches when I left. I thought the first thing I have to do is join a church. And to be honest with you, some of these people were rather unpleasant. And most of them were absolutely, not all of them, there's some good-hearted Christian people, but many of them were absolutely ignorant and incompetent in handling the Word of God. I even spoke to an expert in cults who attended. He was an elder in a Baptist church. He had a master's degree and a bachelor's degree in theology, and he taught biblical Greek. He was a member of the Reach Out Trust, which is a British counter-cult ministry. His field of expertise were Jehovah's Witnesses. And I remember... What
was his name?
I can't remember. It's over 30 years ago. This would be in the early 1990s. But I remember him getting the Aid to Bible Understanding book down, because I explained what the oneness doctrine was, and he couldn't refute it. This is a guy with a master's degree who's a member of a counter-cult ministry, Reach Out, the biggest counter-cult ministry in the UK. And
do you know what? It's not called Reaching Out.
Yes, I told you, it's the Reach Out Trust.
Right. You know what? Bizarrely, I read about those this morning.
Right. Well, Doug Harris died recently. He was the Baptist who founded the Reach Out Trust. He was a bit of
They specialised in deprogramming Jehovah's Witnesses, don't they?
Yes, but they are extreme. Many of them are extreme charismatics.
Yeah.
So what they do is...
I never understand why people feel the need to do that to us. Do you know what I mean? Like why they type Jehovah's Witnesses. I don't understand that.
Yeah, but you'll find there's lots of crazy stuff amongst the Reach Out Trust. When I lived in Cornwall, I got very friendly with a guy called Philip Mawson, who was the head of the Reach Out Trust for Cornwall. So he's and he told me stories about where he was on stage with Doug Harris at Reach Out events, and they would both be speaking in tongues and binding demons and doing all this stuff. Well, Philip Mawson gave up the Christian faith and became a practicing Satanist. When I say that, yeah, I actually went to his house. He had a ram's skull on his wall, and he had the books of Aleister Crowley, another famous Satanist.
Wow, okay,
he actually became a genuine Satanist, and he was the head of Reach Out Trust. I mean, there's so many. I'm not saying they're all bad people. There are some good-hearted people amongst them, but there's lots of clueless, wacky people, especially, unfortunately. Another thing was, I remember listening to Doug Harris. Now, this will be up on YouTube. Doug Harris and JT. JT is one of the regional leaders for the Reach Out Trust in South Wales. Maybe he's not alive now. This was quite old. And they were speaking to an African man, I think of Caribbean descent, who was oneness.
Yeah.
And the amount of mistakes that Doug Harris and JT made on defining the Trinity was just beyond belief. They didn't have a clue. And this African man who was oneness, which I used to be oneness, he was absolutely tying them in knots. From memory, I can't remember the sort of thing that Doug Harris and JT were saying, but basically they were not defining the Trinity properly. They were misdefining the Trinity and then trying to defend their misdefinition, but calling it the Trinity. I mean, it's ludicrous. Anyway, I tried different churches, and after 2 years I was told that the Trinity was pagan. The Baptists didn't baptize correctly, and when I asked, is the Son eternal or created, they said the Son is a created Son. That was my home group leaders at St Austell Baptist Church in Cornwall. And I made a decision. I thought, these people are complete idiots. They honestly don't know what they're talking about. I went to Aberdeen. I got a degree in theology from Aberdeen. I got a 2-1. I couldn't do the Greek or Hebrew. Well, not at university level. I picked up some Greek. Professor Marshall, the New Testament scholar, was very kind to me. He actually helped me and showed me that Dr. Walter Martin's claim about sonship by incarnation view was basically wrong. So he was extremely kind to me, and I should have got a 2-2 because I messed up one of his honours papers, and under university regulations it should have been scored at a 0. I revised all night and I just couldn't sleep. So when I went into the exam, I hadn't slept the night before, and I explained that to him, and he said, just do the best that you can. And he marked it, and he marked it at my normal grade, which I thought was extremely kind. But I should have got a total fail for that paper, and that would have brought my whole grade of the degree down by 1. He was a lovely man, but by then I'd just been hurt too much. I'd been from church to church to church, everything from hardcore Calvinists, Brethren, Pentecostals, Charismatics. I even went to the Catholic Church. I spoke to a Catholic. I don't think he was a bishop. I think he was like an auxiliary bishop, or maybe he was a Monsignor who was acting as the bishop's assistant. We're talking years ago, decades ago. That was in East London, quite near to Limehouse, where I lived. And I waited to speak to him after the service. This was when I'd just come out of oneness, because I was brought up as a nominal Catholic, my mother being Spanish. And I remember speaking to him, and he said to me, I don't have time to speak to you. I have to do this with the church and lock up this door and lock up that. And I thought, well, you're more interested in the building than you are in me. So I never went back. I got my degree. I've always been a bit of a loner, never been much of a mixer. So, I haven't had the happiest of lives, but I'm very, very keen on evangelism. I love that. And unfortunately, I made the biggest mistake of my life. I was staying in a Salvation Army hostel in Plymouth, and they were very keen for me to get involved in churches because they could see I was into the Bible and I loved Jesus. And they said I should go to the Baptist church next door, and they kind of pressured me a little bit to do that. And I went, and I thought, a load of rubbish. I remember the young girls there were praying like Muslims with the cupped hands, as if you could.
Really?
You had a raised palms up, fingers up. They were praying like you couldn't have a dialogue with these people. You can't discuss anything with these people. This is the big problem I have with most religious groups, but particularly evangelical Christianity. If I'm wrong, okay, let's talk about it. Let's discuss it. But I mean, I did visit churches. When the Toronto thing happened, I went to a couple of churches. I will check stuff out so I know what I'm talking about. But I've never actually joined a church. The longest I ever was in a church was Peniel Chapel, 1985 to 1986. I was in there for a year, and I was in the Oneness for 9 months, and that was it. Yeah. I did try various churches. I remember I went to one church, and you see, in a lot of evangelical churches, it's the pastor's son or the pastor's daughter or the pastor's wife who's leader. Yeah. And I remember going to one church and speaking to someone less than half my age, a girl, right, in her 20s, when I would be in my 40s. Yeah. And I asked some questions, so I will ask questions to find out whether people know what they're talking about, which they usually don't. Yeah. And I asked her a question which obviously she couldn't answer, or she didn't want to answer it. And she said to me, quote, "I have authority over you because I'm a leader in this church."
Oh, wow.
I mean, to a complete stranger. Yeah. It's unbelievable. Yeah. But I made the worst decision of my life. I was very keen on the Ray Comfort video series. I think he's sold out a little bit because he's now on Christian TV on TBN. So I'm not happy about that. But when he started, he's a man from New Zealand who had an emphasis on using the law to evangelize. And I thought that was a good insight, and I was really quite taken by him. So when I found about a year later that Baptist church were using Ray Comfort in a street evangelism group, I had to go along. And I joined them. We had a meeting at the Methodist Church in Plymouth in December 2008. I was very regular. Not going to the toilet, regular in attending that group. We'd go, I think, once a fortnight, was it? Or once a week? But maybe it was once a fortnight. I hardly missed a single meeting I think I left in about September, when they were just about to go to Northern Ireland, to a Pentecostal church in Northern Ireland, which had changed the name. I'd actually written to this Pentecostal church in Northern Ireland, and the pastor had told me that the Trinity was pagan, that it was a false belief. Now, you might have not used the word pagan. The Trinity was completely wrong. It was the devil. It was a satanic belief. Yeah. And this group started evangelizing with this Pentecostal church. But I didn't know that at the time because they had changed the name. Right. To cut a long story short, it was mostly young people. I thought they would mature. I thought they would grow up. Biggest mistake of my life. They never did. No. I left the group because of scandals. Okay. For legal reasons, I can't tell you what those scandals were, but I found out years later that they weren't playing Monopoly late at night with each other. They were doing... Right, okay. And it was on a pretty large scale. And of course, when happens in so many churches, it's all covered up. Yeah. I hit the roof when on the Plymouth Herald, front page of the Plymouth Herald, they mentioned Russell Baker. Okay. I'd stood next to him month after month in this street evangelism group, and he was front page of the Plymouth Herald. 4 years for an offence, and I can't say what the offence is, but it was 4 years. It was, but with people who were very young.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I understand what you mean. Yeah.
And nobody would talk to me. They travelled up to that church in Northern Ireland, all covered up. Nobody would talk. I had one discussion with the head of the evangelism team in the McDonald's, but I wasn't allowed to. He would only speak to me if we discussed in generalities. I agreed I would not ask him about the numerous scandals that took place, that was going on within the group, or Russell Baker. And I think I've got a recording of that somewhere. He said he was learning to be an elder. And every single thing, because these people have gone to other churches, they've all left and moved on to other churches, and no matter where they go, it's always the same thing: cover it up, and if you pursue it, we will report you to the police. Well, because something similar happened to me only once, and it was by these sort of standards mild. I was whipped naked with a wet towel when I was at Buckfast Abbey School.
Yeah.
And the abbot of the monastery and my housemaster, who I knew as Father Benedict, they got, I think, 12 to 14 years for what they did, which was a lot worse than what happened to me. And I hadn't done anything wrong. He was just whipping me with a wet towel because he enjoyed it. So because of that, I could not back down. I exposed this because, you see, I wrote to the church in Northern Ireland. I wrote to all these people. No one would discuss it. The only discussion I had was a brief conversation with the head of the evangelism team and his new wife, who was an African-American lady who he subsequently, I think, has divorced, in McDonald's, with her defending him to the hilt and interrupting me non-stop. So we never actually discussed anything. But all of these pastors, every one of these would not discuss it. And in the end, they all reported me to the police. I told the police I won't back down. I was arrested. I was given a police caution. Well, first they put me in a police cell, thinking that would teach me a lesson. It didn't. I still went on. So I was arrested. I was given a police caution, which unfortunately I signed because I was frightened, because they took all of my life's work, all of my hard drives with all of my life's work on it, and I just wanted it back. Yeah. So that was the way to get it back. All of my computers, all of my cameras, huge sacks of stuff. And then I went to about 2 days later, to the police station. I said, can I speak to the police inspector? I did, and he was shocked. And I said, I will not back down on this. It's a matter of principle. I told him what happened to me at Buckfast Abbey. I said, I have a duty to stand for this. And nothing happened because of what I said to him. Then he sent a police constable to warn me that things would happen if I didn't take videos down, because the mistake I made, and it wasn't a mistake, I mean, we have a sex equality law. I mentioned the females who were involved with one was not a Christian and one claimed to be a Christian with a Christian ministry, a fairly large Christian ministry, making money out of Christianity. So I can't say too much more.
No.
But I wouldn't back down. I was arrested. I went on trial. I was literally hung, drawn and quartered by the female judge, interrupted non-stop. I should have had the case dismissed. I wanted to defend myself because somebody I fell in love with, who I never met, but I fell in love for only the second time in my life. I spoke to this lady for hundreds of hours, and I mean hundreds and hundreds of hours. I couldn't afford a phone, so I spoke to her in other people's house, other people's flats who lived in the block where I lived, Tamar House in Devonport in Plymouth. And she claimed we were going to evangelize together. We were going to preach the gospel. We were going to take on all this hypocrisy and take on the cults. And we were going to do all this stuff, but that's all it ever was with her. It was always talking on the phone. But me, I really sold my heart on this, that now I had found, because I was doing all what I was doing, evangelizing for years. Since I came out of oneness, never stopped doing it since 1989 when I came out of oneness. Now I'd found someone who I'd finally evangelize with. And we made a deal. I was going to do these videos, expose all this hypocrisy. And the deal was that if I had any fines from the court or if any of my stuff was seized by the police, she would replace it. That was the deal that we made.
Yeah.
And she found a solicitor a barrister. We had a three-way conversation, the barrister, myself, and this lady, before I was arrested, before any of this sort of stuff. And I can't, Then when I was arrested, then I went on trial. Then I went to prison for 28 days for harassment. And whether what I said was true or not was irrelevant. It was manic that we have to defend women.
Yeah.
No matter whether it's true or not. Now, these were religious people claiming the most hardcore form of Christianity, that in Ray Comfort's evangelism technique, you go up to people basically and say, have you ever told a lie? The person says yes. And you say, well, what does that make you? And the person's supposed to say, a liar. Yeah. And then you're supposed to say in the Ray Comfort technique, have you ever had thoughts of fornication? Or have you ever looked at page 3 of The Sun or any sexual images?
Yeah.
And then the person says yes. And then you say, well, what does that make you? And maybe you have to egg them on. It makes you a fornicator.
What was the point of that?
Well, it's to use the law to convict of sin. But the thing is that these people were such utter hypocrites. Anyway, I went to prison for 28 days. In prison, the lady suggested that I write an appeal, well, not an appeal, ask for a retrial where you're tried all over again. So I did that. She kept saying she would visit me. Every week she was going to visit me in prison. I was there for 4 weeks, but every week there was a different excuse. And then when I came out of prison, it was a friend from Manchester who was there to greet me, not this lady. Because we kept saying I was going to make her Spanish tortilla, because I'm half Spanish. I was going to make her Spanish tortilla, proper Spanish tortilla, and we're going to have a lovely meal with salad and Spanish tortilla and a bit of wine. And then we're going to launch into our evangelism that we were going to do. If she told me straight from the start, I don't give a damn, it would have been best. Every time the police seized everything I had in 3 different occasions. So she did replace 2 or maybe even 3 laptops that were taken. I mean, she was so impressed with me. She promised to buy me, this was 10 years ago, she promised to buy me an i7, which was the top of the range one at the time. And I said, no, I don't need that for the simple videos that I'm doing. You can buy a reconditioned one. AMD processor is cheap. I think I got an AMD A8 or an AMD A10, which would cost a mere fraction of that. So I tried to be reasonable, but I mean, I had everything taken. Cameras, hard drives, papers, letters, even a case of blank, unused DVDs. Everything was seized to be destroyed. I mean, Guy Fawkes wouldn't have been treated as badly as I was. Because it was, well, I'm not going to... So I had a retrial. It was obvious I was going to be sent to prison again. The judge was absolutely angry.
Yeah.
I had done it all myself. I tried to defend myself, and I should have had the case thrown out of the female judge, because I tried to. I at the pre-trial, I'd asked for the caution to be added to the charges against me, which is insane, right? The reason I did that was that in the caution, the police had named the pastor of the church in Northern Ireland and accused me of making sexual allegations against him, which I had not. They'd obviously spent literally 30 seconds looking at the stuff. They didn't understand it. They just bunged it on the charge sheet. The male leader of the street evangelism group I joined, and a female connected to this pastor's church from Northern Ireland, maybe I had made comments or suggestions about, but not the pastor. So it should have been thrown out because they'd made charges against me, and one of the charges was false. But the prosecution and the judge just worked together to just move it on, and it was all just forgotten. At the retrial, I should have gone to prison again. But I spoke rather movingly, and this time there was the judge, and either side of him there was a magistrate. The male magistrate clearly didn't care too much. I remember him saying, "Why have you made 80 videos?" As if this was a terrible thing for me to do. And I said, well, I said something like, well, as a Christian, you don't just evangelize once in your life, you evangelize repeatedly. You see? I mean, Matthew 28:19, go you all the world and preach the gospel. Jesus isn't saying we go out once and preach the gospel and then we never do it again. But that's what that male magistrate seemed to think. The judge had it in for me. At the pre-trial, I had mistaken him for a reporter from the Plymouth Herald, and that had made the female judge, because he was dressed in civilian clothes, as an observer, because he was the most senior judge in Plymouth, I think. So he was observing the female judge, and I said, "Can I just ask you, Your Honour, is this man here from the Plymouth Herald?" Because I wanted the whole thing recorded in the Plymouth Herald, the absolute scandal. What I didn't realise was, according to the lady I was friendly with, the lady I fell in love with, whether this is true or not, I don't know, but apparently the Plymouth Herald were mixed up in this as well, because one of the senior editors of the Plymouth Herald went to the very church that had given the evangelism leader that had done naughty things 3 months after his church split up because of the scandal caused. He joined as a youth pastor at a new church.
So were you after that then, after that second appeal, what happened then?
Well, it looked like I was going to go to prison because the judge was furious with me, and the male magistrate didn't give a hoot. I, for the first time, gave my sort of story.
Yeah.
And when the three of them came into court and we all had to stand up, the female magistrate, who had blonde hair, very blonde hair, she looked directly at me and she smiled. So obviously they'd had a huge argument in the back, and she wouldn't back down. Oh. Sorry. I will have to go soon. So she looked directly at me. So obviously they'd had a huge argument in the back. The judge apologized to me. So obviously he was made to apologise because I'd asked for a Bible for my comfort, and he denied that at the very start of this trial. And I also asked for a barrister to defend me in court, and I was denied one. I actually wrote asking for a barrister, but I was denied one. The problem I had was that the lady I fell in love with, she was helpful. She did replace the laptops. And I think she gave me £32, which was the cost of, because I'm long-term unemployed, and I'm actually on incapacity benefit due to ill health. She gave me £32, which was the cost of a return train ticket to Bristol. That's where I met this barrister who was defending somebody else at Bristol, and this was the barrister that this lady had got me to defend me, because she knew from the start I'd go on trial, and I didn't think that could happen. How can you go on trial for telling the truth? How can you do that? And when it involves children, how can this happen? It's unbelievable. It's absolutely unbelievable. I mean, it's unbelievable. So I went to Bristol. I saw this barrister, and he was connected to Christian Concern for the Nation, but he would defend me through his own company, because Christian Concern for the Nation didn't want anything to do with one Christian fighting another Christian. Even though it was these other Christians who had reported me to the police, and I had gone to court because of these other Christians, and they did that to cover up the naughty scandals happening in their churches. Well, this barrister said, "Got any money? Got any money? Got any money? Got any funds? Got any money?" It was just repeated. And he's used to getting thousands, obviously. He didn't want to defend on legal aid, because for him that would be Mickey Mouse money. He wanted the serious money. He clearly knew his stuff, because he told me I would be found guilty because of this and this and this and this and this. I then mentioned the naughty things that happened. And I said, well, surely if these things involve children, surely that could be a defence. And he said, quote, "That might be a defence." So in the end, he didn't have any interest in defending me. So when the trial came nearby, I thought, well, I'll defend myself, which was a stupid mistake of mine. Because I think what he could have done, maybe he wouldn't want to do this. But what he should have done is ask all the people who brought all the charges against me to appear in the dock, and then question about the things that happened in the church.
In my experience, a friend of mine was defended himself in court, completely nothing to do with this sort of case, just a minor, rent dispute actually with a local authority, and he chose to defend himself, and they looked down on him quite heavily. I feel like perhaps the judgment was probably skewed, because they almost punished him for self-representing. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Well,
shocking, really.
Well, the first time with that female judge, she absolutely went for me at every occasion. She was absolutely nasty. And the summing up, honestly, Jack the Ripper would have had a more mild summing up.
When was this?
But what happened at the retrial was the female magistrate smiled directly at me, and the judge said I would be fined £500. And I gasped, because if you're on universal credit, well, it would have been job seekers allowance at the time. That's an absolute fortune. So I said out aloud, that's an absolute fortune. So all three of them talked to themselves, and then the judge said, okay, £250. I don't think that happens very much, that kind of... And when I left the court, one of the ushers, or one of the security people who decided to attend during his break, because he heard about it, he nodded at me and gave me a thumbs up. It hasn't quite finished. There's still more things after this, but you've got the gist of it.
Yeah. So was that ago was that then? Was that a while back, or because we sort of
2016.
No, so quite recent.
I was found guilty. The retrial, I was fined £250 because I wouldn't, and then I actually saw the head of the evangelism group. I recorded him on camera. Now, I didn't have a camera, and I'd fallen out with this lady who I'd fallen in love with.
Yeah.
Because, she kept saying she was going to meet me. She was going to meet me in prison. We were going to meet at my place when I came out. She was going to drive me home. I was going to make her Spanish tortilla. And if she had no interest in me, we're going to be just friends. That's absolutely fine. I'm not exactly Robert Redford to look at. I don't have good prospects being long-term unemployed. If you want to be friends, that's fine. But we were going to evangelize together. And I set my heart on that. And it broke my heart that... But anyway, when she found that this evangelism leader was evangelizing with his new evangelism team in Devonport, and of course I didn't have any camera, all I had was a tiny cheap MP3 recorder. I did record him. She sent me her brother's old iPhone camera, an old iPhone with a camera.
Yeah.
So I think she was encouraging me, wasn't she, to confront him? But she was clever because she didn't do it herself. It was always me.
No.
So I did confront him. I was arrested a second time. This time I did have a solicitor, a brilliant solicitor from Plymouth. I won't give you his name, but I went to a court and I wanted to know who was the best solicitor. So I spoke to the people in the court and I said, who is the best solicitor? Because they should know, the court ushers and so on. And they all said the same: vote for Mr. Beep Beep. He fights like a tiger.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, because I had confronted this guy on camera and he assaulted me, he physically tried to take the camera off me and took a swipe at me as he tried to grab the camera. I was found guilty because it all goes down to criminal behaviour orders, you see.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. So that time I did plead guilty, the only time, and I was fined £250. So my criminal record at the moment says I was fined £170. So on my criminal record, the prison sentence has been obliterated due to the retrial. They judged that to be too harsh. I've been fined £250 and £170. And I've had probably £2,000 worth of equipment seized from me. They seized sacks and sacks and sacks of literally anything I had, anything to do.
Yeah.
And they did that in 3 different raids. But yeah, it's been very difficult. Sorry to share all this with you. Other people have said they'd like to know more about my background.
Thank you for telling me. You've been through an awful lot. I mean, what a journey.
There was one more thing after that. On the night of Boris Johnston's election victory, and I'm not a sort of happy, clappy, charismatic person who believes that God speaks to him every 2 minutes or something like that, but I do believe that God has spoken to me twice in my life. And once through writing, so a third time would be Cornelius on that list. The second time I believe God spoke to me, a policeman phoned up, trouble about a YouTube comment, again criticism, a complaint from a religious person. This time it was thrown out of court at the pre-trial. But as I was passing the main police station in Plymouth, because it was the morning of the Boris Johnston's election victory, and I'd been up all night. Well, I had a little bit of a sleep, not with my friend, but in my friend's bed, and then I would wake up and he'd sleep for a bit. But we stayed up with the odd sleep, watching the election results of Boris Johnson. When I walked home that morning, probably about 9 in the morning or 8 or 9 in the morning, I was passing the police station, and I do believe that Jesus spoke to me, and he said, "Don't focus on me, focus on the Queen." And that was in relation to videos that I have been making, where I was taken to court. The case was thrown out of court, but I had made some videos about accusations against Queen Elizabeth II, that a religious group had said she rules by the power of the devil. So I focused on that. So that's where I am at the moment, and I'm in a difficult situation because many other people are in the same situation as me, where they have made a moral stand for things in this country that they believe are wrong, and they've been sent to prison or they've been fined. So, but I mean, I'm in my 60s. I'm not in the best of health, and I just can't go through it again. And if I do go through it again, I've got no savings. I've got no job. I've got no pension. I've got no salary. I live very contentedly. I've got a lovely, quiet place where I live. It's a little bit far from the town centre. Would be nicer if it was a bit closer to the town centre, but it's quiet, which is the main thing I want. And I couldn't be happier here. I'm so happy. And if I go to prison again, I will lose my accommodation. I haven't really got many friends, so I've got all of the possessions I own. I will lose them. I'll lose everything I own.
Yeah.
It's not as if I can, I've got a mountain of stuff. I'm in my 60s. I'll lose everything I own, which is not what I want.
No.
Let's finish there, if you don't mind.
No. Well, thank you for talking to me today, Rob. I appreciate that.
Thank you. And we can talk again if you want, but it would have to be maybe one topic from your book, Enjoy Life Forever.
Why not? We'll see. Who knows? All right. Thanks, Robert.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Yeah. Take care. Bye now.
Bye.